This video tutorial is for the Trace an Animated Character assignment in the Illustrator unit. I am in Adobe Illustrator here, and for this assignment I want you to find an image of a cartoon character, and you can go to Google image search. I say cartoon character because cartoon characters already have those really thick outlines in most cases. That'll make it easier to trace using the pen tool. If you want an extra challenge, you can even try something that might not have those lines, but you'll have to create them yourself or figure out where they are yourself. So I've got this picture of Homer Simpson. In Google image search, you want to make sure if you click on something, you want to be able to click through until you get the largest possible image, because some of you may find images that are too small, and when you try to zoom in on them in Illustrator, they're going to be really pixelated, which is one of the disadvantages of raster graphics. This one will be perfect. I've clicked through until it's the biggest possible version of it, and I'm going to right click on that picture and choose Save Picture As. And then I want to save that picture somewhere where I can access it again. I'm going to save it to my H drive. I'll do an H drive. I'll make a new folder called Animated Character and save that JPEG in there. Now I can open JPEGs in Illustrator. Even though Illustrator is a vector program, I can come here and open this. Just be aware that when you have a raster image in Illustrator, there's not a lot you can do with it. Basically, I can click on it, I can hold down Shift and drag the corners to make it bigger or smaller, and I can move it, I can rotate it. That is about it. One thing you should notice is if you remember in Illustrator, anytime you click on something, your color options become the thing that you clicked on. So when I click on an image, I get a no stroke color, so a none on stroke, and fill is, it's question mark, because it doesn't know. And so that can be a problem if you're trying to draw with a pen and then you accidentally click on the image. Now you're drawing with an invisible line. The best way to deal with this is to lock that layer. And next to the eyeball here, I can click on lock, and now I can no longer select it. And that little pencil with the no symbol next to it just means you're trying to draw on a locked layer. In addition, if I come over here to the layers and I double click on that little thumbnail next to it, that will open up an option, my layer options. And inside of these layer options, I can change a lot of things. I can also lock it in here. I can change the color that represents that layer, but more importantly, I can dim images. If I check mark that and click OK, now my image is much lighter, and that's going to make it much easier for me to be able to trace it. I'll need to make a new layer to trace above it, and I may want to rename that. I can call that Trace or something that can help me. And the focus of this assignment is to try to understand how the pen tool works. So the tutorial that we did is useful in just understanding the tool, but knowing where to click, how far to drag, those things just come with practice. And so with this one, I'm going to come back here, make sure I have a stroke that's black, and I'm going to change fill to none. And now I can just start tracing. I like to pick a corner. I'm going to click there. Now I have a little curve there, so I'm going to go forward a little bit, hold down my mouse, and drag. Remember, to create a curved line, you hold down your mouse and you always drag out those handles to create a curve. Now, if I go too far, let's say I come down here and I want to get this nose and I try dragging there, it's just not going to match up. So I can either press Control-Z and go back a step and try earlier on the line, or I can hold down the space bar and I can actually move where that point is. And with semicircles, I find that the best thing to do is to go kind of right in the middle of the circle and pull my handles out so they're tangent. And notice that the line is going this direction. I don't pull the handle to where I want the line to be at that point. I'm pulling it where I want the line to leave the point. And right there, I want the line to be going down out of that point. That's why I pulled down. So I always want to pull in the direction I want the line to go next. If you're pulling the wrong way, you're going to get a bunch of curly-Q looking things like this. And to avoid that, I just keep pulling in the direction I want to go. And as you get better, you're going to find that you can go further away and click less times. But for now, just focus on trying to get as close to that line as possible. Now, if I have two lines that overlap, remember, I can hold down Control and click somewhere else so that I'm not drawing that line anymore. If two lines are going to be crossing each other, I need to be very careful to make sure that those lines actually, even up close, are crossing. So those two lines are good, because if I don't have a closed off area, I'm not going to be able to fill in the colors later. And so I have to be really careful. Now I was selected off of that line. To start it up again, I just move my pen tool until it becomes that little /, and when I click there, now I'm starting up that line. And as I click, I'm just going to be traveling around this character trying to get it. And here once again, I need to be careful that it crosses, that those two lines are touching. Now in a lot of cases you can save yourself a lot of work by not having to draw something that's already a shape. The eyeballs here are round. I can just come here to my ellipse tool and use the circle tool to create that shape. And the eyeballs in the middle are just black circles. So I'm going to take that, and over here underneath my colors, right now it's a black stroke with no fill. If I click this swap button, now it's a black fill with no stroke. And I can make a copy of that by using my move tool, hold down the Alt key so it copies, and do that across. And I'm going to keep doing this all the way around this character. Now this one I'm probably going to have to draw. Just make sure I swapped back to my outline. And I just want you to get more comfortable with the pen tool because it's by far the most useful and used tool in Illustrator. And as I go around the head here, and I'll just do a little bit of the head to do a review of the, oops, Control Z to undo. I want to go over how to do the live paint again. So I am going to pause this and finish the head here in just a second. So I'm holding down Control and just clicking anywhere else to finish that line and create a new one. I finished the head here, and I can test it by turning off the visibility by clicking on the eyeball here of the bottom layer. So I've got a pretty good outline of Homer's head here. Now I can start right away in doing my coloring, but I want to show kind of an advanced technique. So in a lot of cases you'll have characters that have shadows, and those shadows aren't separated with a thick black line. But I can recreate that still by using the pen tool. So I'm going to start here with a thick line to create that shadow effect. But what I can do is when I'm done with it, when I'm ready for it to go away, I can come here to my stroke and change it to none. And now that line is invisible, and I can't even see it unless I use the move tool to select that area, and then it's red because it's on the red layer. I can see that that line is actually invisible. But even though I can't see it, it still applies in my live paint group. So the way I make a live paint group is I use my move tool or my selection tool to select everything. Control A would do the same thing. And now all of those lines are selected. I can press K on my keyboard to get the paint bucket. This is going to create a live paint group. You can see right there it says click to make one. And when I click, now if I've done everything correctly, every section that's been closed off all the way should be one that I can fill in. Now I can just use a color, click there, and that section is filled in. With swatches, I want to keep that yellow. And the way I can is as long as that yellow is the currently selected one, if I come over here to New Swatch, it'll let me name it. So I'll call it Homer Skin, click OK, and now that one is always available. That way if I want to go to like I'm going to find a more shadowy color, make a new swatch of that, Skin Shadow, and now I can click between those and have those be available. So I can come here and click the shadow, and you can see because I did that the invisible line, I can not see the separation between those, but I can still fill it in. And then I'll get his beard color. And I don't really want to do a live paint group until I'm done with all the lines, because if I add more lines later, let's say I come over here and I decide, well, I really need to get the rest of him. So I'll do some of the sleeve here. And I'll just try to get a closed off area so I can show you, so you don't have to watch me doing this for too much longer. Okay, so let's say I add those additional lines. I can't just go in there and start live painting those. Even when I come here and I select, oops, this is what will pop up if you try that. It's telling you how to do a live paint group, so sometimes those things are useful. Even if I come back and I select all of the lines and I try to hit K and do it again, I can't just do that and add to a previous one. You can see what it says. If you want to merge it, click the Merge Live Paint button, which is up here. And if I click on that, now those lines, that has been added to the previous live paint group, and now I can color those in as well. So it's easier just to do all of the lines at first, but if you need to, you can add those lines, click on the Merge Live Paint button, and then continue to live paint them. So your assignment is to take a cartoon character, and I want you to spend the entire class period. If you finish early, if you had a simple character, finish that one and then create another one. I want you to trace it out so that it's an entirely vectorized version of that character, and then with that, the nice thing about vectors, I can take that whole thing, I can shrink it down tiny, I can make it humongous, and it retains that quality. And that's why we do this sort of process. And so once you're done with that, you can go to File, make sure you save an Illustrator copy under Save As, and that's your Adobe Illustrator file. And then I also want you to go to File, Export, and export a raster graphics. Remember, because we're working in vector, in order to get things like JPEGs, we have to do our export to change the kind of file it is, and inside of there is the JPEG as well. And I'd like you to submit the JPEG to my Drop It To Me folder.